Secret societies have their origin in religions, mysteries, folklore, myths, and legends. They very often created them, and in each of these tales can be found the ultimate truths of the secret societies of the world. Tales of the children of Jesus, the Holy Grail, hidden chambers in ancient structures, and profound inner wisdom are all part and parcel of the fascinating world of secret societies. It is a world of the occult. It is hidden right before our very eyes, and all we need is new sight. The inner teachings and secrets of these hidden groups is one of profound wisdom. This is why it has been so powerful. It is time to walk the path of the initiate and discover the ultimate sacred hidden truths for ourselves. In order to discover the truth, we must go right back to the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John chapter 1, verse 1. These infamous words taken from the Gospel of John are full of magic and mystery. This is just how religious texts should be. They should cause a moment of thought. They ought to make us reflect. This statement is one of the keys to understanding the core of secret societies. But truly, what does it mean? Well, because the world of secret societies is a land of the metaphysical, we too shall have to embark upon a journey into the unknown. Breaking it down, we are at least given a time period, the beginning. You can't really go to anywhere before that point. In modern scientific thought, this would be the moment of the Big Bang. In fact, these biblical sentiments of there being a word at the very beginning are mirrored across religions and cultures, not just science. In the Hindu faith, the word is Om or which means simply to sound out loud. It is a primal sound or vibration that accompanied the creative process, as if that which was within suddenly emerged. It is the sacred syllable, the sound that went forth and from which all else was made. Humans often make this sacred sound as if they were joining with the Creator. And in fact, one of the meanings behind is the principle that it creates or recreates unity between all things. It is known as pravana, meaning to make a sound or hum. The Kathopanishad tells us that the is the ultimate goal of all humans, all things, and that whoever truly knows will have all he desires. This is the core of the teachings at the very heart of ancient secret societies. The sounds were incredibly important, for they touched the soul of man. Just like Christianity, this creative word is also a seeming paradox, in that it is also a trinity. The three elements of the magical creative principle give us creation or Brahma, preservation or Vishnu, and destruction or Shiva. Or in Christianity, the virgin birth, the life and the death. As in Hinduism, we start all over again with creation or resurrection. This divine and sacred principle is mirrored in the acts of the initiate who joins the secret society. He or she must die to this world and be born again in the field of the chosen ones. To science, the word would be the energy catalyst that set the thing in motion, the spark. It is the energy that sustains it, and it is the force that will bring it back together again at the big crunch, at which point it is postulated that it will all begin again. One thing that does seem remarkable is that the sound of the Big Bang is said to still be audible in the universe today. They tell us that we can see it in the white noise of the TV screen and hear it on radio waves in the background. It is the idea that this sound of the Creator can be experienced by the adept that beckons the initiate. To many scientists, there ought to be no philosophical or theological musings on the facts, just the facts, whatever they may be. And yet, even those supposedly cold, analytical minds chew the fat on the question of who planted the dynamite. And why should a creator be taken out of any scientific equation? After all, if science is the search for truth and understanding of our place in the universe, then we should never rule out an intelligence higher, smarter, or more powerful than ourselves. The unfortunate thing is that the current facts don't help us in deciding whether there was a creator or not. Real evidence would be as clear as black or white, and it isn't there at present. Something planted the dynamite of the Big Bang, didn't it? Or was it an accident? If so, where did all the stuff come from in the first place? The questions have still not been satisfactorily answered by scientists because they simply don't have the answers. And yet, just because we have questions does not necessarily mean they are nor should be answers. We are more often than not left with that very human thing, experience. It is the feeling, emotion, and connection to something that forces the mind of the individual to come to an acceptance that he is not alone and is in fact united to something much bigger than himself. The sacred nature of the secret society implies that they have the ultimate answer to these questions. There is often no argument against the faith and belief which comes from such emotion other than the psychiatrist who tells us we have tripped or had an hormonal overdose. In the end, as it has always been, the choice is one of free will to believe or not to believe. So, moving on from the beginning, we find that this peculiar thing called a word was there at the beginning, that it was with God because it was God. So God is a word. So what is a word? Well, in the actual proper translation of the original Greek, we discover that it means saying. It comes from the Greek word logos, 500 years before Christ. Heraclitus said that logos was the source and fundamental order of the cosmos. All existence and the creative spark itself was the logos, something that Islam holds to. It also means the inward intention of action, the moment before we actually speak. It is the impulse, the energy thought made real. It is incredibly powerful, and it is the secret word of the ancient occult societies. Words such as logo and logic are derived from this small word, revealing the spark it has itself created. A logo is a symbolic device used to represent a meaning. It spells out for those who recognize it what is the intention of the owner. It is a symbol, and it is more powerful than any words. The symbols of the secret societies reveal these inner secrets. Logic is something that is derived from being able to speak or reason and argue. We are assumed to be intelligent because we can voice our thoughts. We can give external life to internal thoughts, but so can animals. When my dog is fearful, he will bark and growl. He too is making external his inner emotions. But he cannot argue points of interest. He can express beliefs, whether esoteric or exoteric. That is the human domain, and so logos would not be applied to the bark of a dog. It is something more. So, whatever this word was in the beginning, it was conscious, thoughtful, and gave voice to his inward musings. It created something by externalizing inner thoughts. In fact, we are all gods in this respect, because every time we speak, we are using the very same energy which came from the Big Bang. Our thoughts are energy waves, just as our speech are sound waves. These waves are energetic, and all energy ultimately came from the one source. In the same way, the mystical Sufi concept of the Baraka has this energy, continuing through the very words of the masters. Each Sufi master will pass on his teachings to the next generation until the end of time. They believe that the Baraka is the word of the divine, and that only through their own balance and wisdom will they be able to continue the process. It is no different in secret societies, where these very same ideas are passed on from generation to generation and held sacred and secret. There is immense power in the words we use. We can lift somebody up out of misery, or we can strike them down into the gloom of depression, just by letting them know what we think of them. But words that unite and reveal mysteries that are in fact archetypes within us all have a deeper sense of sacredness. The Hindu would call this the Atman in each of us. The Atman is the soul that rests within each and every one of us. It is the energy of the universe, the creator, and if the material body and will of the human is of the correct mind, then one Atman would recognize the Atman in another. It will see itself. The Atman is the soul which recognizes the Atman of all existence. It is the part of the whole and yet the whole itself. Carl Jung, the psychoanalyst, often used a story which expressed the lack of understanding we have in the West for such concepts, stating that our Christianized personas failed utterly to comprehend non-linear ideas. The story goes like this. An initiate visited his master one day and asked about the Atman. How would he recognize the Atman in others? The master said that that was the role of the Atman, and that even the Atman within an elephant would recognize another. The next day, the initiate was walking along a path when he saw an elephant and a rider. Deciding that his own Atman and that of the elephants would have knowledge of each other, he walked on and into the path of the great beast. The rider shouted and screamed at the initiate to move out of the way, but he refused to listen to the rider, trusting instead to the wise words of his master. The elephant also refused to move and lifted the initiate into the air with his trunk and threw him some distance. The initiate, bruised and shocked, went to see his master the following day and complained bitterly. The master simply stated, "You failed to listen to the rider. He too was the Atman, as do all things." Sacred teachings like this lie at the heart of secret societies and help the listener to understand infallible truths. Because of the mindset of the West, we have to deal with everyone in a box-like, linear fashion, not understanding symbolism and parable for what they very often are, deep truths. Instead, we break the world apart and reduce it down to constituent parts, and then we can no longer see the whole, the Atman. Every action, every thought, intentions, and idea has a consequence in the whole. Refusing or failing to listen to the Atman from wherever it derives is a failing of the West, for the Atman is the true self, and now we struggle to even comprehend this. Our arrogance and aloofness is our persona, and before we know it, some great beast will come along and throw us from our path because we have refused to listen. In the West, we would say that we were on the same wavelength, tuned into each other. The Atman is no different to the Word in as much as it is the energy, the the Creator. The Word is also the breath of God, and so too Atman means breath. Of course, the Atman is also the true self, for we are all from one. Once the tales and secrets have been shared, would often be sent to sleep, for in sleep the truths emerge. In sleep, our unconscious self shuffles the thoughts away into electrobiochemical filing cabinets, ready to be used again and merging with files already stored away. It is an incredible electric sorting system, and yet we are not fully in control of where the files are stored, for we are unconscious of the act. The filing is left to nature. It is the that controls our inner and true self, for our true inner self is the We don't always have to meet somebody in person to share their energy, for quite often it can be stored in words on paper. How often have we sat reading and thought to ourselves, I recognize what he or she is saying. I share that thought. That thought is energy, and you have just shared it. In today's world, we are fed a constant stream of negative news. We turn on the 24-hour news channels and find ourselves bombarded with stories of pandemics, financial turmoil, global environmental catastrophe, war, murder, and all manner of newsworthy nonsense. Think about it. How often do we see the stories of positive nature on mainstream channels? There are plenty of good stories to be told, but humanity wants to hear about the frightening ones first, and those who wish to control the sheep prefer them to huddle together frightened. And it is not just the news channels. Even our entertainment is often depressing and negative. Soap operas and TV movies are full of unreal characters dying, tortured, arguing, depressed, and down on their luck. and yet we tune in by the millions, and so only have ourselves to blame for the junk we watch and then become. But why are we so stupid? That is a question each and every one of us must ponder for ourselves. But humans do have a propensity to such things as a whole, and there are evolutionary reasons behind it. Often, seeing other people's misfortunes, even if they are actors playing out the role, makes us feel better, superior, and safer. While the infirm wildebeest is being picked off at the back of the pack, we know that we are safe. We may feel sorry for them, but we'll also learn from their mistakes. The legends created by our ancient brotherhoods utilize the same devices, but were created to inspire us to do better. So, our input is more often than not dark and gloomy, but it makes us feel on the whole a little safer. For those of us who need a stimulant, we can always read some wise and uplifting poetry and move forward. In both cases, it is the energy from all around us that is helping us to survive. We are not islands distanced from our neighbors by a void. We are connected to them in ways we don't even realize. The energy or sound wave from the words from the TV set are influencing our minds. We read. It is via the waves of light that we see the black shapes. We then convert those shapes into letters and words, and then we reason through what we have just processed. It all happens so fast because it's processed at high energetic levels within the mind. But there is more depth to this energy, but we need to understand. Our words are formed from our understanding and observations. We see a snake and we give it serpentine names. It zigzags, slithers, hisses, and sloughs its skin. The words have emotion and meaning built in from our observation of the snake. We can place emotion at all levels into our words, not just the way that we speak them and stress them, but also in the structure and order of the letters. The letter V is a power letter. Vindictive, vindicate, vengeance, venomous, victory, vile, virulent, virus are just a few of the words starting with V to add power to them. W is a softer letter and gives us wisdom, water, wet, willing, and so on. All letters are derived from some form of observation, and the words formed from them also. We are in this way adding the magic of mind into the energy wave of sound. Again, this is all part and parcel of the truths held within secret societies. They utilize these verbal energies to great extent. Special words and ways of saying them all play a part in forming the mind of the initiate. We add in our spiritual thoughts too. Our deities are often manifestations of light because the sun guides our way and gives us life. We wake in the sunlight and disappear into the darkness of the dream state at night. Allah is derived from Ile, meaning to shine, and so many others such as Elohim, Michael, and Gabriel all include the Ele or El for shining. The English word the is a descriptive term added into English and resolves back to light or God. The Latin is Elle for that and contains Ille for light. God is the most powerful thing, and using the is claiming it for God or Theo or the true self we know to be the Atman or These secret truths of words have been taught in the esoteric occult societies for thousands of years. So the word is powerful, is creative, emotive, and magical. When we put letters together, we spell, and any good magician knows the power of a good spell. This documentary is a mass of words. They have been placed in order to make sense to the viewer. They are converted thoughts and observations. In so doing and depending upon the skill of the writer, we can make them more or less powerful. But they all started somewhere a long time ago in the mists of time. They began when man became conscious and self-aware. Suddenly, he saw the magnificence of the world around him. He looked up and saw light and dark. He looked around and saw diversity. He stared into the water and saw his own reflection mirrored on that world of water in which we could not survive. He started to reason and order, to rip nature apart with reductionism. He named things from his observations, and in doing so, he believed he was master over it. His power grew as he learned, but he also realized he was weak, that one day he would die, that his mind imagined things he would often rather not be conscious of. The imagination is one of the most powerful evolutionary tools we have become conscious of. It reveals the true magical power, for it contains the word image. The very first mention of the word explained that it was the faculty of the mind to form and manipulate image. We used it from the very start. We wondered about what would happen if we chipped the flint into a specific shape and how we could use it to skin an animal or kill a man. We imagined ourselves in situations and prepared ourselves for them before they actually arrived. Should we defend or should we attack? Thousands of years passed by, and millions of minds imagined until we arrived at a zero moment when man pondered what would happen if he split the atom. He unleashed a torrent of universal energy upon his fellow man, as if the final statement in a dark side was at last revealed. Always there was two sides. Almost free energy and mass destruction as a bonus. The word had come full circle, and man now believed he was with God. He had used words to pass on knowledge to each other, slowly accumulating vast resources of information locked away in those magical words. He had looked into creation itself and believed he had found the smallest part and called it the atom. Then he wanted to play like some Athenian deity. And then the dark magic was cast upon the land by a child who seemed never to learn. He quickly discovered that we were not gods. We were humans, and we failed utterly to realize that there was a dark nature residing within us. But this has happened before, not nuclear warfare, but nevertheless warfare, hatred, destruction, and deceit. Man, using the word, has revealed himself, warts and all, to each other. He has collected great libraries and then burned them to the ground for power. He formulated religions based on sacred concepts, then burned his opponents at the stake. He invented clever transport systems and proceeded to poison the atmosphere. He has created a world mind with the internet and then turned it into a reservoir for porn and bomb making. It seems that no matter where we have turned with this power of the word, we have always taken ourselves along. And yet, throughout all of this, the golden thread of wisdom has been maintained within the center of the secret societies. The words, energy, and fabled actions of past times and peoples remains at the heart awaiting the initiate to become an adept. All is not lost. Along the way, there have been those who have understood the true nature of man. We seem to think that today, in the 21st century, we are at some kind of pinnacle, that this date or that date will bring a great enlightenment for the world of humanity because we are that close. Others, of course, believe only the dark side and see a catastrophe. There is nothing new under the sun, and almost every age has predicted such things. There have been masters of the mind and word, and a great many of them have been members of the secret societies of the world. There have been people who have seen clearly the sacred ratios of existence and the power of the imagination. We remember some, but even more have disappeared into obscurity, for not all masters wish to be written into the pages of history to become mere words. And so a book of paradox begins. There are many things we can learn from our foray into the world of these diverse masters of the past. Of these many things, we will now focus on the mystical world, the magical world, the strange and wonderful that each of them has somehow found contact with. For it is within magic that the deepest secrets shall be found. We need not pinpoint which secret society held those beliefs because they all did. It is a constant stream flowing through them all. Magic is the belief that the material universe is only a very minor part of reality, and that in fact it includes many other planes of existence and even consciousness. In the same way we possess consciousness and unconsciousness, both of which have their own concepts of reality. So too the universe mirrors this and more. Also in the same way that we cannot access the unconscious realm of our own mind, we simply cannot access the other realities of the universe, unless of course there is a way. And that is the realm of magic, being able to find ways of accessing other realities and affect our own. One of the other realms or realities of magic is known as the astral light, and believers of this reality say that the cosmic fluid of the astral light can form or mold physical forms. The force that can do this is said to be human thought, human willpower. The human being existing in the microcosm can, once it understands, affect the microcosm. The small can affect the large. We can set in motion an action into a level of reality and cause an effect in the greater reality. And all of this through the use of the sacred energy or word. All of this can sound quite potty to the mind that is not used to such concepts, and like the hand of a clock, we need to adjust our position a moment at a time in order to understand that time and things change. Understanding this magical ability of the human being takes some effort, and indeed, it has taken men lifetimes to come to terms with or blow away. In essence, man discovers that he is in fact God in almost every sense of the word. To the growing elite and occult brotherhoods, magic was truly powerful. One famous 19th century and early 20th century occultist was Gerard Oncos, otherwise known as Pappus. He founded the modern group known as the Martinists, based upon 18th century Martinist order, a kind of New Age Christian sect. He claimed that magic was really scientific, carrying out experiments on powers and energies that were little understood at the time. He stated that magic was dangerous and that the three main principles were required in its operation, namely the willpower of the individual, the actual material basis or tools, and the actual force upon which the mind or will operates and affects a change in the material. This was a period seeing the rise in scientific thought, overpowering religious or spiritual and Martinist, and others such as the Rosicrucians saw a middle ground. This force, which science would discover, was known to the Jews as the Odd, the astral light to others, and the magnetic fluid to yet more. It was a natural composite agent, a fluid force that Eliphas Levi said would receive the vibrations of the will via meditation. It was a force acted upon by the frequency of thought. Levi stated that it was a force that illuminates the mind, vilifies and destroys, separates and coagulates, all depending upon the will of the individual. According to 17th century writer J.B. van Helmont in his Hortus Medicine, it is a magical force sent asleep by sin, is latent in man. It can be awakened by God or by the art of the Kabbalah. And what is this force? As Eliphas Levi again tells us in his History of Magic, it has been said that this agent is a light of life by which animated beings are rendered magnetic, electricity being only a transient perturbation. The practice of that marvelous Kabbalah reposes entirely in the knowledge and use of this agent. Practical magic alone opens the secret temple of nature to that power of the human will which is ever limited but ever progressive. The world of the invasive dark world of magic was putting a strain on the upright Christian ethics prevalent in the West, and many openly fought its influence. In The Black Mass from 1924, J. Bricard, we find the following statement. Today, when our society is invaded by the eroticism of the Middle Ages sorcery, the words Black Mass has lost their primitive meaning. The mystic element weakening, sadism and sensualism alone remained, degenerating these last years into vulgar orgy, so-called revival of pagan ceremonies, accompanied by lewd scenes, excited by the rhythm of libidinous poetry and the intoxication of oriental perfumes. In short, we are told that the frenzies of the sexual rites associated with the rising of these so-called powerful occult forces was vulgar to the Christian West. We are told that the literary groups, such as those of the Bloomsbury sect or Black Mass, were full of adherents to the occult. They were also joined by people such as Conan Doyle, Ian Fleming, Bram Stoker, and H.G. Wells. The universities of Oxford and Cambridge and much of scholarly London were infested with the black arts, creating a kind of mass hypnotism. Emerging from these groups, we find such people as Aleister Crowley, creating his own occult groups and influencing a great many writers thereafter. They recognized a deeper inner wisdom that they claimed in some way connected them to the universe or God. This inner wisdom is at the heart of the world's religions and secret societies, and often due to the oppression by the Orthodox Church, this mystical element of our psyche has been forced underground. This underground stream has occasionally surfaced throughout time, and we can see from these trickles that the elements of truth were in fact widespread and ancient. This water of wisdom has in fact given life to the plants that have grown on the surface, and sometimes even great trees have emerged and have refused to be chopped down by intolerance or bigotry. These trees are great mysteries we know today, such as the Holy Grail, Great Pyramid, and Ark of the Covenant. If we grasp these growths firmly and pull hard enough, we uproot the hidden secrets that first gave life to them. One of these roots was to branch off into Islam, and it would reveal a mystical world that was connected so firmly and so obviously to the main trunk that almost everyone had missed the connection. This root had a name, Baraka. The term Baraka is a Sufi one, and from which our French bark and Italian barca is derived. Indeed, in the contemporary French, the term Baraka, of Algerian origin, still has connotations of luck or blessings, and this would eventually make complete sense. The ancient Egyptians believed that everyone was a unique individual. The people were said to have two distinct parts, the Ba and the Ka. These are not simple concepts and have in fact baffled and amused Egyptologists for over 200 years. But we need to break them down, for within the names of these two human domains attributed by our Egyptian ancestors lies the truth of the term Baraka. The Ba is close to what we would call the personality, the traits and acts of the man or woman developed over the course of life. The Ka was the life force or soul. It is the first, or in number, one. This is found to be true in the Indian concept of the word as well, where Ka means supreme and together, with R means the supreme light or one light and essence. The Ka itself came into being when a person was born and was often depicted as the person's twin or double. This is of course ancient Egyptian alchemy at play, whereby both the Ka and the Ba must be united to become one, and the twin element has come down to us through the centuries in our tarot cards, fables, and of course the twin riders of the Templar symbol. Because the Ba was the personality of the unique individual, it too was unique, whereas the Ka, as the life force, was the same for everyone. It was the creative force running through us. The Ka itself was made by the god Khnum on a potter's wheel. Hence, it was an energy vortex exactly like the vortices found within the very atom. This energy is required for life and is also raised by the effects of the processes in the mind in raising enlightenment. The kings or pharaohs had many Kas due to their own immortality like the gods. In fact, the goal of every individual was to remain united or fused with the energy of life force, Ka, and the personality, Ba, after death, and to join Ra, or the sun, on his journey of perpetually recreating creation itself. In this way, the individual wanted to return to the creative point, the Alpha and the Omega, at the same time and same place. In essence, they wanted to reside in that perfect state. This perfect union comes down to us in the uniting of the three principles required: Ba, Ra, and Ka, Baraka. In fact, this is most likely the reason for mummification after death, to keep the body and the symbolic representations of the personality in place for the Ka to unite with the Ra and reinvigorate life. Should the body rot away, the coffin and in fact the very death shrouds or bands of cloth would act as the spare body. Now we're beginning to see the value of the shroud of Christ as the body of Jesus joined his Father, leaving behind his personality infused with the energy of his Ka. It is itself a Baraka or ark. Ra himself, as the personification of the son of the one Egyptian god, is in essence wishing a reunification. This is described as the greatest of mysteries by the ancient Egyptians, and it occurs at precisely midnight, the middle hour, the in-between state. A great many rituals of ancient and modern secret societies must be enacted at this time. Ra, in fact, must reunite with his body by midnight in order to be resurrected as the morning light of the sun. This is personified as the body of Osiris, who is the underworld personification of the Egyptian one god. You see, Egypt was a monotheistic culture, but different personalities and aspects of the one god were given different but meaningful names. In the underworld state, the Ka and Ba of Ra was Osiris, and Osiris, once reborn, is Horus, who became the Jesus in the Christian mysteries. These great acts of deities are not just reenactments of the sun, moon, and stellar cycles, they are also deeply held esoteric truths. It is indeed a secret knowledge, and one that has remained so for generations, so much so that we still search for literal treasures when we truly encompass them all ourselves. In fact, Osiris personified the old self, or the old creation, and Ra was the new birth, the new man. Just like medieval alchemy, creation was made from a mixture and through transformation. This mixture required the reduction of the self, the Ba and Ka, and the reformation in the midnight hour of the parts to create the true trinity of the Ba, Ra, Ka. The Egyptians believed that when the Ka left and the body died, it returned to the divine but remained close to the body. In fact, even false doors were created in tombs for Kas called Ka doors, so that the Ka could access the earth at will. Now the Ba could roam the earth, but only when Ra, the sun god, was in ascendance in the sky. When Ra returned to the underworld, so too did the Ba. This is in fact the Egyptian explanation for ghosts. The union of the Ba, Ra, Ka is indeed a true blessing, and this is where the Arabic Baraka or the Hebrew Baruch takes the word, both different versions of the Sufi Baraka. Blessing, of course, is now an English word derived from the Old English bletzian, meaning to sprinkle with blood. being derived from the blood rites called blots, and from where we get the term to blot out one's sins. The blot rite is Old English or Old Norse and is even followed today by modern pagans or heathens. The origins of the rites are supposedly lost, but the term means sacrifice or feast. The term blata means to worship or to sacrifice. Indeed, in the Hakana saga Goa from Heimskringla, Snorri describes how at these blots, blood was sprinkled on the altar and temple walls, just as they were in Egypt and indeed the Jewish temple. In fact, there also appears to be an extrovert use of the term for fusion. The meaning of the sacrificial feast, as Snorri saw it, is very plain. When blood was sprinkled over altars and men in the toast were drunk, men were symbolically joined with the gods of war and fertility, and with their dead ancestors, sharing their mystical powers. This is a form of communion. Again, here we see this union is found with each other in society and not just with the gods. When an article of value is passed across the boundary of frith and grasped by alien hands, a fusion of life takes place, which binds men one to another with an obligation of the same character as that of frith himself. This is the true offering of the life source. The Ark of the Covenant, in order to work properly, also had to be sprinkled with blood. It had to, in effect, have a ka offering. This was the same as the shroud, which was to be sprinkled with the blood of the Christ, himself seen as the offering by the pagans who converted to Christianity and had previously practiced the blot rituals. The blessing then, seen here to be entirely related to the term baraka, is to infuse something with holiness or divine will, which is also another word for ka. The blessing has always been officially given by the priest of the Orthodox Church, and so is the same as the baraka of the Sufis, a blessing or word of will passed from the master to pupil. Of course, for the Sufi, the term baraka was symbolized by a boat and itself became fused with the symbol of the dove. The dove itself was the Christian and Gnostic symbol of the Word or Spirit of the Lord, and hence it was the baraka. The later Gnostic Christian heretics, the Cathars, took this symbol and with their own links within Islam, fused the two devices together. Orthodox Christianity could not allow these ancient esoteric truths to be spread abroad, as it had built its power base upon the literalisms of the Bible, and so they persecuted the Cathars and burnt them out of sight. And so it was that these ancient and deepest of sacred truths entered into the realm of the secret society. However, it does seem that these Cathars did hold the secret of the Temple of Solomon. They were the perfecti who protected the esoteric wisdom of the Ark, for they were the Western version of the Eastern Sufi, who themselves protected the baraka. The only vessel that they spirited away from the ill-fated Montsegur was the vessel of grace, otherwise known as knowledge. In essence, the term baraka is an original term for ark and is thought by many to be derived from the ancient Egyptian boat. The Sufis have often been said to have originated, or at the very least to have origins in Egypt, and so having some knowledge of Sufism, we must embark upon a journey into the term, knowing full well that what lay before us is an often contradictory and argumentative subject matter. Sufism, for those who may never have heard the term, is called the way to the heart, which of course means the center. It is the way of the pure, as Sufi may derive also from the word sada, meaning cleanliness or pure. Another viewpoint has the word being derived from the Arabic word for wool, suf, thus implying the cloak worn by the Sufi, or the fact that every Sufi was seen to be a shepherd. It may also come from the Ashab al-Sufa, meaning companions of the veranda or people of the veranda. The veranda spoken of is the one on the Prophet Muhammad's mosque, and these people of the veranda were said to spend their days in prayer and meditation during the Prophet's lifetime. These special adherents were from many lands, including Persia, Ethiopia, Egypt, and even Rome, bringing a great many diverse beliefs and interests with them. There is, however, a more telling term from which the word Sufi may be derived: Sophia. This concept of wisdom, spoken of again and again in esoteric literature, and which has come down to us today via all manner of faiths and creeds, even into secret societies such as the Freemasons. This version of the name was espoused by Abu Rahan Biruni, a Persian mathematician, astronomer, scholar, philosopher, historian, and much more of the late 10th and early 11th century, a veritable Renaissance man before his time. The fact that a Persian stated this belief relates to something Springett said in his book, Secret Sects of Syria. The Sufis are a secret society of Persian mystic philosophers and ascetics, whose original religion may have been that of the Chaldeans or Sabians, who believed in the unity of God but adored the hosts of heaven, especially the 7 planets as representing Him. Whatever the true origin of the word Sufi, it cannot easily be summed up in just a few words due to its mystical mix. For sure, this is an Islamic cult, much akin to the likes of the Albigensians or Cathars of the Christians, who were known as the Pure Ones. However, absolutely no one is sure of the true origins of the movement, and indeed it could and probably does even predate Islam in many respects, and could even have influenced Muhammad himself. Sufism, then, is this mystical side of Islam continued, and this is why it's so important to the Sufis to keep this baraka, this continuance, so strong, because the base instincts of man will steal the truth and turn it to profit and gain. This is why the baraka seems so strange to those outside of the loop, because it is the mystical world that is unknowable. To be a true mystic, one must know oneself and one's own unconscious world. Not everyone has the will and time to do this, and others can do it as if by accident. The Sufis see themselves as moving through this world of ours as if they are a part of it, and all the time knowing there is so much more. They feel at times the divine presence and yet look upon mankind with an eye of mercy. At least that's the story. To them, each one of us has a spirit of Ruh, which originates from Alam, a creation of the divine light itself. The food of the spirit is therefore more light, and not that of the external sun, but the inner sun of Allah. To mirror and reflect the wisdom of the light is all that can be asked. To be like the moon, and we all know the crescent moon is a symbol of Islam. The one who truly reflects this light of Allah does not take the light away from Allah, but instead glorifies His name. The one who does this can give divine blessings via the baraka. The baraka is therefore not himself, but the light and wisdom and power of God. One becomes the crescent moon, the ark. One of the literal reasons that Baraka has become our barge, barca, ark, and of course bark, is because it is involved in the art of shipbuilding. This kind of shipbuilding, though, involves no floating upon real water. It is more to do with the water of the mind. By having Baraka, one is able to access divine information and to be able to pass it on. But before being able to do this, one must learn how to build a decent ship. In some Muslim traditions, if the Baraka is strong, then when the wise Sufi dies, it will remain with the non-decaying body and may even transport wisdom to his successors. This is the reason that shrines are so important to the Muslim traditions, because the shrines are seen to be infused with the divine essence from the Almighty Allah, via the Sufi master, who is to all intents and purposes the ark. In this way, we can now see why the Kaaba at Mecca should be so important, as this is a location of this universal Baraka energy. These sacred relics were only thus sacred due to the fact that they were seen to contain the Baraka, just as Christian relics held a similar power of latent energy following the Crusader invasions of the Muslim lands. It became therefore spiritually important and esoterically aligned for the Father to pass down these Baraka-filled items, thus continuing the process of Baraka through the ages, physically as well as esoterically. Secret societies have held within their inner teachings the golden thread of this Baraka or truth. It is the deepest of secrets, and it takes a rebirth of the mind in order to comprehend the reality of the meaning. In the end, it is the Word, the energy of the divine, that must come full circle and find itself given new life within the mind of the adept.